like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Okay, so we're all getting ready for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And,
Yeah.
I know I've already started making my list, but
Yeah.
it always makes me think, though, behind all those crazy deals and all the stuff that we buy online
Right.
are real people. The people packing the boxes and shipping them. And
Yeah, it's true. We often don't think about that, the human side of e-commerce.
yeah, exactly. And that's actually what we're going to deep dive into today. We are talking about worker strikes planned at Amazon
Oh, wow.
during the busiest shopping time of the year, Black
Nice.
Friday and Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
We have this article from Fox Business dated November 28th, 2024
Okay.
that kind of gives us all the details on this.
This is going to be an interesting one. This is a global movement. It's not just like one warehouse or one country.
Right.
It's huge.
Yeah. So let's break it down first off. Who exactly is striking and where are these strikes happening?
Okay, so workers from over 20 countries are planning to participate,
Wow.
including the U.S., the U.K., France, Germany, Japan, Brazil, India. Wow.
And Turkey.
That is a lot of places.
Yeah.
Okay, so who is organizing all this?
It's a coalition of labor unions and activist groups, mainly UNI Global Union and Progressive International.
Okay.
And they're the ones spearheading a campaign called Make Amazon Pay.
Make Amazon pay.
Yeah.
What are they hoping to achieve with these strikes?
So they're targeting what they say are labor abuses, environmental concerns, and even threats to democracy stemming from some of Amazon's business practices.
Really?
And this isn't even the first time this is happening. This is going to be the 5th year in a row that they've organized strikes during this really key shopping period.
Wow. So they're really trying to hit Amazon where it hurts, right in the middle of their busiest time.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how effective these past strikes have been if they're doing it for the 5th time.
Right. Well, it's tough to measure the direct impact of previous strikes, but what's clear is that they have brought a lot of attention to these issues.
The article doesn't give us specific data about the outcomes of previous strikes, but this continuous pressure from these groups is definitely playing a role in the conversation around worker rights and, just corporate responsibility in general.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so back to this year's strikes. The article mentions something specific about the strike in India.
Yes.
What's going on there?
So in India, the strikes are particularly focused on worker treatment during that crazy heat wave they had back in July.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Apparently, the working conditions were just brutal, and this is really fueling their demands for better treatment.
Yeah, it's like a real, we're talking about people's lives here and their safety and their livelihoods.
Exactly, and it brings in this human element into the conversation. It's not just these abstract concepts, it's people actually facing these really difficult situations.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got this coalition of workers all over the globe planning this strike. What are the organizers saying about all of this?
Well, the article quotes Christy Hoffman, the General Secretary of UNI Global Union. She emphasizes the power of, workers all uniting across borders and saying it's all about collective strength and solidarity. And she even compares this fight to this decade-long struggle for collective bargaining rights that happened in Germany.
Oh, well.
Which suggests that, they're learning from past labor movements.
Yeah, kind of taking inspiration from what's worked in the past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Hoffman also claims that despite, Amazon spending millions of dollars to prevent worker organization, their demands for justice just can't be silenced.
Oh, wow.
It's like this classic David versus Goliath situation,
Right. So speaking of Goliath, what is Amazon saying about all this?
Well, they're pushing back pretty hard.
Okay.
The article quotes Amazon spokesperson Eileen Hards, who calls the organizers intentionally misleading and says that they're promoting a false narrative.
Okay, so they're firmly denying any wrongdoing. What's their side of the story? What's their argument?
Amazon claims that they offer excellent pay benefits and opportunities for all their employees.
Right.
They highlight the fact that they've created over 1.5 million jobs globally as proof of, their positive economic impact. They're basically saying that they're a force for good in the world.
Right. And they're probably also, pointing to all the initiatives that they've taken to improve worker safety and well-being.
Yes, definitely.
It's interesting how we're seeing such drastically different pictures painted of this whole situation.
Yeah, it really is. And the article does point out one key piece of information that's still unclear.
Okay, what's up?
The actual number of workers that are participating in these strikes.
Oh, so we don't know how big it's going to be.
Exactly.
Wow, so we have these strong statements from both sides.
Yeah.
But the actual scale of this strike is still a mystery.
Yeah. And that makes it really tough to predict what kind of impact it's actually going to have.
Right, because the number of people involved is really going to determine how disruptive this is going to be to Amazon's operations.
Especially during such a critical time for them.
Yeah, this is already a really fascinating deep dive. We've got, worker demands, corporate responses, and just a lot of uncertainty about the actual impact.
A lot of unknowns.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
Okay, well, I think now that we have a good understanding of the situation, let's shift our focus to the potential implications of these strikes.
Okay.
How could this impact consumers, the entire e-commerce industry, and even global supply chains?
Yeah, let's get into it. I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, me too. It's fascinating to me how this situation really highlights something that we often forget about,
What's that?
the whole, the complex network of people and systems behind our, everyday online shopping experiences,
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in the convenience of it all, just clicking add to cart and not even thinking about the people, on the other end actually making that happen.
Totally. And these strikes, regardless of how big they actually turn out to be, I think they highlight this growing movement that's pushing for better worker rights and corporate accountability.
Yeah.
Especially as we move, further into this digital age.
For sure. Okay, so if we zoom out a little bit, what's the bigger picture here?
Yeah.
What are the potential implications of these strikes, especially, if they gain some real traction?
Well, if they're successful, these strikes could create a ripple effect throughout the whole e-commerce industry.
Right.
Not just within Amazon.
So, do you think this could actually lead to similar actions in other companies, or is this something that's really unique to Amazon?
It's possible. I mean, success here could embolden workers in, similar sectors like delivery services, warehouses, even tech companies that rely on a global workforce.
Right.
To really leverage their collective bargaining power.
Right.
We could see a wave of demands for better conditions and better compensation.
Wow. That's a pretty significant shift. It could really reshape the landscape of worker rights in this digital economy.
Right.
Are there potential downsides to this? I mean, couldn't this lead to companies just raising prices to kind of offset these increased labor costs?
Yeah, that's a valid concern for sure. If worker demands lead to, higher costs for companies like Amazon, those costs could definitely get passed on to us,
To the consumers.
Yeah, to consumers. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah, so it's not just about worker rights. It's also about how this could potentially impact what we pay for stuff, everyday goods and services.
Exactly.
And do you think consumers are ready for that?
It's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It really makes us think about, how our behavior as consumers might be impacted by all of this.
Right.
Would knowing that there are workers out there striking for better conditions, would that affect your shopping choices during the holidays?
That's a really good question. I think for me, it definitely would. I think it would add another layer of consideration to my decisions.
Yeah, it really makes us think about our priorities. You know,
Yeah.
are we willing to prioritize, these ethical considerations over convenience or affordability?
This makes me think about something that Christy Hoffman said in the article. She talked about how the workers' desire for justice, it's unstoppable. And it makes me think about...
That's powerful.
Yeah, and it makes me think about, there's this growing awareness, I feel among consumers about the conditions under which goods are produced and delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a rising tide of conscious consumerism.
Right.
Where people are paying more attention to the social and environmental impacts of their purchases.
Totally. And these strikes, especially happening during this peak shopping period, Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
It's a huge platform.
Yeah, it could really amplify that trend, don't you think? It's like they're shining a spotlight on these issues exactly when everyone is focused on shopping.
It's true. And, if consumers start associating those big shopping days with worker exploitation, it could lead to people changing their buying patterns.
Wow.
Maybe even increasing support for these more ethical brands.
Yeah, so it's like a feedback loop. Worker activism is influencing consumer choices,
Yeah.
which then puts more pressure on the companies
Exactly.
to improve their practices.
It's a dynamic system.
Yeah.
And these strikes are really just one part of this much larger conversation about the future of work and global capitalism, you know?
Right. That's a great point. So as we kind of move toward, the potential impact on e-commerce as a whole, like, what other major shifts could we see as a result of these strikes?
Well,
Okay, so we talked about the workers' demands, and we talked about how Amazon is responding and, the potential for all of this to impact other companies. But here's where I think it gets really interesting.
yeah.
What if these strikes actually work and change the future of e-commerce? Completely.
Right. What if this is like a turning point? For years, the focus in e-commerce has been all about speed and efficiency and getting the absolute lowest prices.
Yeah.
But what if consumers start to prioritize like ethical considerations and, workers' rights just as much as those things?
Yeah, so almost like a fair trade movement,
Exactly.
but for online shopping.
Exactly. Like we've already seen this happen with things like sustainable fashion or ethically sourced coffee, where people are actually willing to pay more for products that align with their values.
Yeah, totally. So you're saying that these strikes could be what sparks that same trend in e-commerce?
It's possible.
Wow. So people might actually start looking for like a fair trade label
Yeah.
on their Amazon shopping cart.
Right. And that could completely change how these e-commerce companies operate.
Yeah.
They might have to rethink their entire, supply chains, their labor practices, their pricing models.
Wow, that would be a huge shift. But isn't that kind of risky for the workers? I mean,
Yeah.
Amazon is this massive company
Right.
with a ton of resources and influence.
Yeah. There's always a risk when you're talking about any kind of labor action. But if we look at this in the context of everything else that's going on,
Right.
there's a growing awareness
Yeah.
of, income inequality and the struggles that working class people are facing,
Right.
even in developed countries.
Yeah, so these strikes are like tapping into that.
Exactly. It's not just about, I'm buying a product. It's about like participating in a system that actually aligns with your values.
Right.
And that shift, I think, in how consumers think that could be what really changes things.
Wow, this is so crazy to think about, especially as we head into Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
Yeah, it's a really crucial time.
It's a big moment.
Yeah, these strikes could completely reshape not just the relationship between workers and corporations, but the entire global economy.
So to our listeners, as you're browsing those online deals this holiday season, maybe just take a second to think about the people
Yes.
who are behind those products.
Yeah.
Their fight for fair treatment could be the beginning of a much bigger change in how we shop and how we work and how we see our place in this global economy.
It's a really good reminder that our choices matter. What we buy, where we buy it, how much we're willing to pay, it all sends a message.
Right.
And ultimately, it's up to us as consumers to decide what kind of world we want to live in.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for joining me and helping break down this complex issue.
Oh.
It's been my pleasure. This is definitely a conversation that I think we're all going to be having for a while.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.